Welcome to Pods with Posh and Paul, a podcast designed to inspire and challenge listeners through story, experience and insight. To face adversity, learn from suffering and discover how to embrace life with a heart filled with love and gratitude. We are so thrilled to have you journey with us and can't wait to share your stories. Join Sue O'Callaghan and Joanne Webb as we disrupt the theory that everyone has perfect lives.
We are super excited, and today we are joined by the lovely Dean Payn. Dean is an entrepreneur, visionary, and the founder of the Crate Flexible Office Space. And the Crate Flexible Office Space is the most amazing venture. It's the most amazing space. You go in there, there is warmth, it is open, there is fun, there is laughter, it's bright. And it's just a hub for an assortment of businesses. And it's really inclusive, really nice. And it really epitomises Dean's personality, really, because you are happy, shiny, and that was our very first impression of Dean, wasn't it? It was super happy, super positive, but we know that behind every happy smile, behind every bit of positivity, everybody has a story, and we are here to hear Dean's a little bit today.
Before we start and unravel some of that journey, could you just give our listeners a couple of tips that they might leave with today as a takeaway?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple little snippets of what we might talk about and cover. Who knows where we're going to end up, but I want to talk about the power of thought today a little bit, and how thought is, we don't have to hold on to every thought. We have the power to let it go or to hold it tight, and it's either helpful or unhelpful. So I want to talk about that. I would like to talk a little bit about how our feelings are an indicator or a dashboard of what's really going on in our mind, in our thinking, and a dashboard is helpful, isn't it?
Yeah,
totally. You don't have to be afraid of our feelings, all those little things that pop up on our dashboard to go warning. We can embrace it and look at it, and it can be really, really helpful and lead us in the right direction. So, and I think we're going to start off pretty soon talking a little bit about my story, and a very close, deep, tragic loss that shaped my life and really who I am today. So I can't wait to share that with everyone as well.
So Dean, thank you so much for coming on board today. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. And I think Joe and I agree, as would listeners, that you have the most extraordinary energy, as Joe has said, and it's quite a gift for people to be surrounded by that energy. But we know your story isn't straightforward. You, like many of us, have a period of suffering that you've worked through as well to come to the place that you're at today. So let's go back and start at the beginning. And if you're brave enough to tell your story, we'd love to hear it.
Awesome. Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me here, and I'm so excited. And obviously we got the chance to meet each other a few months ago, and to see what you guys are doing with Impact Mental Health is so special. And it's not just the fact that you guys are jumping into this massive arena of there's a lot of help and a lot of love that's needed in this arena, but you guys just carry, such care and authenticity and love for people, and you ooze that, fun and energy too. And I think sometimes, we talk about mental health and it can be kind of all down and out and a bit heavy and a bit serious, but you guys kind of lighten it up. So you're making it really easy for me to be here today, and I'm sure that's, anyone that does visit you or get to hear you guys speak on the topic would have the same experience. So it's a real honour to be here on your show. So thank you.
Thank you.
So a little bit about my story. Well, I grew up in Beach Haven, just on here on the North Shore, so not too far away. And it was really much the haven. We still have a joke now. You can leave the haven, but you can leave the haven, but you can't get the haven out of you, or something.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say you could leave the haven, but you can't leave the beach.
No. Something like that. But anyway, it's always with you. Being brought up in Beach Haven. For an example, I remember being a little kid going to the dairy to pick up milk. I got mugged on the way to the dairy.
In Beach
Twice.
Yeah. And
like
for listeners, we're talking Auckland, New Zealand, aren't we?
Yeah, totally. So, it's not so much the hood now if anybody lives there, but it was back in my day. But anyway, so look, that was sort of probably around between the ages of 5 and 6 when you could walk to the dairy safely, and parents would send you on a little errand. That goes back a few years, doesn't it?
And they sent you again after the first time you got mugged.
Toughen up, kid. So but around about the age of 10 my parents did separate, and there obviously was a massive kind of shift and of divorce, should I say. They divorced in their marriage, and so being tossed between dad and mum and different weekends, and then about a couple of years into that, my mum and her new husband to be decided they wanted to go live in Australia, which we, as young boys at that point, I was about 10, 11, and we were pretty excited about that. The idea of living in Aussie and the Gold Coast of Queensland and the surf and all those good things. So even though it was really, really hard to leave our dad, of course, we got pretty excited about that. The interesting thing is that my brother was, Charlie, was 3 years older than me, so I was about 11, he was about 14, and sounds kind of pretty heavy, but I think it's pretty honest. We hated each other, and I know it's this teenage rivalry, and it's all it probably was, but at the time we really did hate the guts of each other. So we lived in Australia for about 3 months before he decided that that's it, I'm going home to live with dad, and I think pretty much he didn't want to be with me and I didn't want to be with him. We did that for 9 months, and I even visited New Zealand in the holidays to see my dad, and he went and stayed at a mate's house. Like, that's how bad I was.
No.
After 9 months, he came back, and this craziest thing happened. We had missed the hell out of each other, and we became loving brothers, and it was so cool. So that was a real gift, because we had 3 years before he was involved in a tragic car accident, and so that time with him obviously was really special. Prior to that, and I was sort of that 14, 15, and he was, of course, 17, 18, and doing what 17, 18-year-olds do, and he would take me everywhere like I was his best friend, and so we had a great time. Did a few things we probably shouldn't have, but we had lots of fun and lots of memories. So that was all good until, I don't know if you've ever kind of seen in the movies or you hear people talk about that knock at the door at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I heard it, but it quickly followed by my mum sitting upright in her bed screaming, going, "Charlie." She just knew instantly something had gone wrong with my brother.
Makes you go cold, doesn't it, even now, thinking about
so
it.
we all kind of rushed out of the bedrooms into the front door and opened the door, and there was 2 police officers at the door to say that my brother had been involved in a tragic car accident, and the driver had died at the scene, and that he had been transported to, we were in Aussie and Gold Coast, to Brisbane Hospital. And they had no idea what condition he was in, but we just needed to get to the hospital as quick as we could. So to sort of fast forward that story, he was in hospital for a month before he passed away, which we sat by his side for that whole time. He had, towards the end, before they could move him, they couldn't move him because of the tragedy of what was going on with his head damage, but he had 5 holes in one lung and 2 in the other, so he had 2 life support machines on each side, and he had unknown quantity of brain damage until they moved him and measured it. He had 75% brain damage. So it was a pretty horrific situation, and we were there right to the very, very last night. As you can imagine, as a family, we were sort of living at the hospital, which is not kind of a healthy environment, really. And of course, late nights and a lot of worry and a lot of stress going on. And so the doctors and nurses had really encouraged us, hey, please, go home and get some rest. So I took the weekend before, and as a 15-year-old boy, I stayed the weekend after my parents went home, and I left the hospital room at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and about 3 a.m. in the Red Cross rooms, they knocked on my door and said, "Ring your parents, your brother isn't going to make it through the day." So I had to ring my dad in New Zealand and said, catch the first flight over, and my mum to drive up an hour from the Gold Coast, and the day rolled out as they'd said, that he passed away that day. So I lost my best buddy, my best friend.
And Jean, that is such a young age, isn't it? 15 to go through so much, because I just hear the words shock. Every parent, every child's nightmare, every human being's nightmare is to hear that knock on the door, isn't it? Because instinctively we know the instant shock and also the trauma of having to then sit with him, the not knowing, the fear, all those emotions that go with it. And I'm sure we've got listeners now who are on board and they've been through the same thing and it resonates with them, and I just feel a sense of shiver going right through me, because the pain you must have experienced and the loss and grief would have been absolutely huge.
So Dean, you were 15. That's a huge thing to go. I mean, it's obviously a huge thing for your mum and dad to go through, but you were 15. You were the only one there in the hospital. You do all the phone around. That's a huge responsibility, and then to lose your best buddy. I mean, it's beautiful in the way that you got to spend those beautiful 3 years together, and I can see that you're really grateful for that, which is awesome, and to have that bond and to heal that relationship between you two, because that must have been really lovely at the time. But how does then a 15-year-old get through something like that? What did you do? How did you get through it? It's
really interesting, because I don't know how I if I say that, I don't really know how I did it. I didn't. We can sit here today, and myself as more of a grown adult, and you've kind of got strategies that you use when life gets stressful and gets hard. But at the age of 15, you haven't really pre-thought any of this, particularly how you're going to deal with it with, when you lose your best friend, let alone your brother. So at that time, I had, without sort of going too much into the story, I did have a faith in God. And I started to draw on that. But the thing that I find really interesting, and I think it's worth talking about, is when people go through tragedy, they often either go somewhere for refuge or to somebody for refuge, or they get bitter. And I don't know why. And I've only got to point up and say, thank God that I didn't go bitter. I got better, or I went for refuge. And my refuge at that time was God. I really don't. For me, that's a relationship with Jesus Christ. But, I don't understand, and I don't, as someone who's gone through this and many other things, as we all have, right? We've all got a story, like you said. How do people get through life without faith? And to me, to boil it down and simplify it, faith is just having somebody else to take the weight.
It's a lovely way to put it.
I love it. And actually, it's knowing there's a power greater than you.
That's right.
When you feel so weak and so vulnerable and so helpless and so worthless and so lonely, all the emotions that we go through in grief, the pain, the anger, the hurt, the rejection, to know there's a power bigger than you, that you don't need to have the answers for it, because there's no answers, are there?
It's very, very hard going through life thinking that it's all on you. Everything is up to you. And when you go through a tragedy like that, which is pretty heavy, right? It's a big weight on your shoulders, and think, you know what, I've got to get myself through this. That's a weight that I'm not even prepared to carry, you know?
And it's a huge question, isn't it? Because I see a lot of teenagers in my work, and we talk about life being survival. Whatever we go through, we've got to survive it. If we don't, we die. We emotionally die, we psychologically die, we physically die. And so we talk about coping mechanisms. What coping mechanisms do you use? And obviously, yours was your faith, which is really empowering. And children might use self-harm, they might use, it might be depression, it might be drugs, vaping, alcohol, whatever it is. I say to teenagers, look, what is the coping mechanism you're using? Because it's actually helping you survive. So lots of judgment comes in on that. You shouldn't be taking drugs, you shouldn't be doing this. And I say, actually, you're surviving. At the moment, you're surviving.
Exactly.
But then we need to actually find coping mechanisms that are healthy, and how do we then move into adult life, which obviously you have, and you've obviously taken that faith with you. How has that impacted then your adult life when you look back on the strength that you found or the comfort you found at the time? How's that impacted you now?
Well, interesting enough, when we talked about my business, which is the crate, and really what makes the crate so special, and what you shared about, Joe, was the fact that we've got a great community. And I think from a very, very young age I realised the power of community. So yes, faith was a big part of it, and but I guess followed through with that was people around me that had faith. And so it's recognising that you don't have to do life alone, that it's not all on you. You can draw on a higher power, like you talked about, in faith, but you can also have people that are like pillars in your life, or big rocks, that just don't move. It's so lovely to have people around you that are just calming and peaceful, and not kind of rapidly react to things when they go wrong. So I think as life has gone on, and learning from a young age, is to strategically make sure that you've got good people around you. And I guess as a young guy at 15, I actually sort of threw myself, and maybe it was part of my survival, was actually to, in a positive way, to kind of make a difference. I joined the Students Against Driving Drunk because it was a result of a drink driving accident, and I ran that group in our school, and I started to be a youth leader and counsel and mentor young people. And so I kind of, in some ways, I remember kind of thinking, I picked up a baton for my brother's life. It isn't going to go to waste, But I think, in some ways, of course, that was a positive thing. It wasn't the drugs or the alcohol, but it could have been, like, not to judge. It was just my way of coping. And I guess that's kind of thrown me into this kind of space of making sure that I'm helping others and using my life in a positive way. But what I want to say, in that I remember from a young age, to make sure that for every, I used to have this, I don't know where I got it from, I had this little rule of my life, this little principle: for every 3 people that I was helped in a pool of 10 people around me, 3 I might be helping, 7 have got to be people that I know that are able to help me.
Amazing.
You know what I mean? And I don't know
That's
where I really
amazing.
picked that up from, but I was helping a lot of young people and serving them and counselling them, those kind of things. But I always made sure I had people that
Yeah.
I could call on and that were actually feeding into me as well at the same time.
Yeah, because you've got to fill up your own cup.
Yeah.
haven't you? Absolutely. Because you can't just always give, can you?
No.
Because then you're depleted. Can I ask a really deep question? Because it's amazing that you had that faith, and it doesn't matter what gets us through, as Sue says, it's just survival, and yours was a positive one, which is awesome, so great. But we had a chat yesterday about mental health, and mental health is something we have to work on every day, isn't it? So have you had some dark moments about your brother as well? Have you sat there and gone, why me? Why has this happened? I'm so angry, I'm really annoyed. Has that hit you as well? And how did you get through them stages?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to my brother, really interesting enough, and interesting enough, I shared with you guys as well, I've got a friend that coaches me, and he said, Dean, you're a perpetual optimist. And we've been looking at that and realising that that's probably been part of my coping mechanism, right, is kind of be the positive guy after sort of a lot of different tragedies. It's not just my brother, but we all, life is full of, I say, valleys and mountains and twists and turns, and it's always going to be like that, right?
Yeah.
Just get used to that. Just accept that, because life's never going to be perfect, and nor is life ever perfect. If you look at somebody else and think, gosh, they got the perfect life, well, you're wrong,
Absolutely.
right? We've all got stuff that we go through. So, interesting enough, we used to always go camping as kids in the Kurunga Valley in the Coromandel, and we decided to have a family reunion there a few years ago, and I've overall been pretty positive and thought I'd dealt with my grief and all these sort of things. And my auntie, we were sitting around the campfire, just the nostalgia of being there, and she said, Dean, would you just say a few words, memory of Charlie, your brother, and, their nephew and all those kind of things? And I said, yeah, no worries. As I did, man, I just burst out crying, and I sobbed as an adult. I'm talking like, a few years, only 5 or 6 years ago, but whoa, I didn't realise that was still there, So it's amazing, isn't it? And so, yes, from a tragic moment, there is times where the darkness appears, and it's very real. And, the reality is, I think, there are good days and bad days, and it doesn't have to reflect back onto the situation with my brother.
No.
Yesterday morning, I got up and I go for a walk most days, very much most days, and that's part of my kind of way that I strengthen myself and my health and my mental health and my well-being, as I walk every morning. But yesterday morning was a hard morning. I got up and I had headaches, and I was really just, I like to kind of get myself in a positive headspace, Mr. Positive, but I was really struggling. It took me a few hours to kind of get there, and I just think that, that's life, right? It's not about being perfect. You're never going to have perfect health, physically or mentally, but accept that and not freak out about it.
And we talked yesterday also when you were mentioning, you're feeling low, that actually the first stage to helping yourself is just to sit in awareness, isn't it? And sometimes I say to teenagers, if you want to pull the bedclothes over your head for a day, that's absolutely fine, because that's what's going to help you get through the day. And actually saying, what am I feeling today? I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling low. That's okay. We don't have 6 high tides and 1 low tide. We have 6 high tides, 6 low tides, and the whole journey of life is in equilibrium. It's the ebb and flow of life. It's what you talked about earlier. We're going to have hard times, but it's how we get through it. I just want to ask you a question, because earlier you talked about the fact that you felt as though the journey through your suffering and pain has been positive, whereas for other people you can end up in a depression, or maybe your life is really impacted so deeply you can't recover from it. What would you say to people whose answer or response would be, well, it's your personality. Obviously, you were born a positive person, whereas I was born and I'm not an optimist. I feel I'm I'm negative about life, and I can't get to that place. I want to lie on the sofa every day. I can't get through my pain. I'm just wondering what it is about life that empowers us, because is it a choice? Is it personality? What do you think the answer is?
I'm not sure if my answer everyone's going to love, but I'm going to be really, really honest and very sincere. That, a good friend of mine says it this way, that often we feel as though life happens from the outside in. that we believe that the things that are happening out there in our world determine what's going on in here. But that's a lie. That's pretense. The truth is, life only ever happens. It can only happen one way. It happens from the inside out. So yes, my brother was a tragic situation. It definitely provoked thoughts and thinking and feelings and emotions and things that were really hard to deal with. However, there are people that have gone through way worse stuff than that. You ladies, when you talk to me about your backgrounds, I'm like, man, like, what would I do if I was in that situation? I hope that I'd come out half as good as what you guys have, if you know what I mean. And what I'm trying to say is that, there is far worse things that happen. So even though I lost my brother and that was tragic, my thinking, or the way that hopefully people my mentors kind of helped me process that thinking, determined where I was going to become. I could have easily I don't think you're born a positive person. I think you install habits that will overall help you lean on the side of being positive or making positive steps. But you either train yourself a little bit to become like that, or you become lazy and you slip back into
that. I really love that. Train is a really powerful word, isn't it? Because as you know, Jo competes in ultra marathons, 100Ks, and she trains for it. Now, I couldn't train for it, I have to say. So I can relate to listeners who are thinking right now, I can't train my thoughts. But thoughts are really empowering, or thoughts are really disempowering,
yes.
aren't they? And you use the word earlier, it's a lie. And sometimes when I hear negative thoughts come into my head, I actually speak to them and say that's a lie. And I'll change the thought and say, what's the truth? And I'll find the truth, but I might not necessarily feel the truth. But by speaking it out again and again and again, when I don't feel it, then you can start to behave it. So you can speak to the lies, can't you? Because you have two voices in your head. And when you're feeling low, you speak of worthlessness and hopelessness and disempowerment.
Absolutely.
But when you asked the question before about the negative or the positive and which way, there's been lots of scientific research done with seemingly really negative people, and they've been asked to do this. It's just changing your thought patterns, isn't it? And as what you say, challenge your thoughts. And even the most negative of people actually come up to more positive. We come up on the scale of positivity. So I think it's definitely, you're the eternal optimist, but that can be
been labelled that
can be to your detriment though, can't it? Because sometimes we're so uber positive that we don't actually want to address the bad stuff, and we can sometimes sweep it under the carpet a little bit, because as you just said before, your words were, there's always somebody worse off, and that's almost like that kind of gets us into rocky territory of comparison. And what we've always got to do is we've always got to address our pain, I think, and let yourself cry around the campfire, and when it comes up, go, wow, didn't know that was there, but I'm going to allow it to come out now, because that's the only way to heal, isn't it? It's the only way to move forward. But then, as you say, you can challenge your thoughts.
So if you think about the fact that your emotion, whether it's negative or positive, is an outlet, but more importantly, it takes energy. Right? Both take equal energy. So as you said, I can be a real positive person, but that can be draining. This is the same way that being negative can be really draining. Just the same way. So if you feel a certain way, going back to what you were saying, Sue, is talking about the fact that you might feel a certain way, and I love this buzzword that's out at the moment called just get curious. Because we can extend more energy trying to work out what's wrong and why do I feel like that. Just thought is like clouds, and they come floating past you in the sky. And you can just that's an interesting thought, that's an interesting cloud, and let it go. Well, hey, that's a really cool one. I might grab that. I might hold on to that, because that's really helpful. You might grab onto one and then realise, that wasn't so helpful. I'll let go of that again. Just let it go, right? So you're getting curious. So why do I feel like that? Why am I feeling really depressed at the moment? Why have I, it could be even things like, why have I got all these headaches going on at the moment? Why do I feel so stressed? Okay, let it go and go, that's interesting. Let me just get curious about that. It's amazing how those thoughts will start to show up. Okay? It will. People, for me, it's my faith. I believe, God will reveal that. For other people, it would be the power of the mind. It could be power of the unit, whatever it is. But for you, it'll start to show up. It'll start to become obvious to you. And sometimes you go, well, is that God, or is that my mind? Or is it just a thought? Well, you'll soon know when it resonates with you and it's helpful. If it's not helpful, it's not for you, and let it go, right? And so to me, whether you're positive or negative takes a whole lot of effort, but actually just whatever it is, just get curious about it. So when my mate says, Dean, you're the perpetual optimist and that must take a lot of energy, I'm like, good point. I might get curious about that.
So
But
Dean,
sorry.
no, go on.
I was going to say, it's within our curiosity we find our answers, though, isn't it? And if we're not curious, then we don't ever find our answers. And there's so many, I think, there's the mindful and mindless, whatever you want to do, or conscious living. But the more conscious we are about our thoughts, the more conscious we are about curiosity, then we definitely find our answers. And within the answers, we know which direction we want to go in, or we can heal, or we can discover things. But if you're not curious, if you don't ask yourself those questions, you're just kind of on that hamster wheel of life, and you don't really know where you're going and why.
Do you know the cool thing about curiosity?
It didn't kill the cat.
It didn't kill a cat. Does curiosity sound like hard work to you?
No, I like it.
Does it
And
sound-
it's a
I
really
love
nice
it.
word.
I
No,
love
it
it
does.
because I love
It's-
intrigue and I love the unknown.
It's fun.
So it
Curiosity
is.
is fun. So you can
Yeah.
actually be going through a really hard time and go, this really sucks. I really don't want to be in this situation. I hate what's going on. But rather getting all, oh, you know what? Just let it go and go, I'm going to get curious about it. And then it starts to become fun. It's light. It's not being on the hamster wheel trying to work it out and trying to solve everything. Just get curious about it. And then it's like when you're in the shower and you have those light bulb moments. You're like, oh, that's what I needed to do,
Yeah.
or that's the person I need to speak to. Actually, that will happen more often when you just allow yourself to relax, not try and solve everything, not try and solve the issue of the fact that your brother's, died and you've got to try and solve the world now, or, the grief and you've got to go through. Just get curious about it, and insights will start to show up, which become helpful thoughts, which, as I said, life happens from the inside out. So as you start to have the right kind of thinking going on, it starts to create a life out there that you want to live. Can I give you a really cool illustration?
Yes, absolutely. We're dying to hear it.
I'm at the movies with my wife. My wife is really, really sensitive with movies, right? As in, she hardly ever goes to the movies, and it has to be almost like a chick flick love story. Otherwise, she
I
doesn't
resonate
come,
with that.
right?
I resonate.
But we went to go and
I
see
love her.
Wonder Woman over Christmas, right?
Kick ass.
Kick ass, yep.
Yeah.
So, Wonder Woman swoops down, and just before that kid Lex runs over and picks him up, my wife's on the edge of it. She's really dramatic, and it's like almost annoying because I'm trying to watch the movie. But I could just say to her, and I just put my hand on her knee and I said, hey, babe, it's just a movie. It's okay, it's just a movie, right? Now, not to sound cynical, but then I got this subtle insight. I thought, my goodness, that's like life. We are the movie director of our life.
We are.
We're often, with these thoughts and thinking and all the things that we conjure up and that way that we react and deal with things, we're creating this movie out there. It's just a movie.
Because we're in fear of the past, or fear of the future, or anxiety from the past. We very rarely are present, are we? And actually, I love what you talk about in the shower, actually being, in the present moment, and actually we don't have to solve everything, we don't have to find all the answers. But coming back to your story, I'm intrigued because all the things you've told us are obviously your learning curve because as a result of suffering that you went through. You're an empowering teacher, you've got so much to teach us. There's a lovely quote by Sharon Salzberg who says, someone who has experienced trauma also has the gift to offer us in their depth, their knowledge of the universal vulnerability that we all have, and their experience of the power of compassion. What would you say to, or me saying to you, does it take suffering to lead us on this incredible journey where we really learn about ourselves? Because it's an extraordinary journey to go on. It's also an incredibly painful journey to go on. I'm not underestimating the pain you've been through, but is it a beautiful journey to go on? Is it worth it? Are the benefits of it for people that are really in a place of suffering right now and tragedy? And there are listeners right now who are broken-hearted, loss of relationship, loss of a job, death, sickness, brokenness in every single way, who think, can I come to that place Dean's at right now? I'd love to get to that place. Are the benefits, is it worth it?
I think that's one of the benefits of getting a little bit older in life is that you go through these experiences, and you ladies know as well as what I do, and to all of our listeners out there, if you're going through a hard time right now, it's unavoidable. Everybody goes through stuff, and it might, to you it might not seem like a big deal, but to that person it's a massive deal. It's their reality. So we're all going through stuff that is really, really hard to deal with, and the reality is it does shape you, it does humble you, it does cause you to have more compassion and understanding for others, which makes you a nicer person and slows you down a little bit. Stop being so cocky and naive and think that you're something and then some. We don't need more of those kind of people around. We want people who are a little bit more down to earth and real and transparent, to say, you know what, I haven't quite been through what you've been through, but I've been through some stuff, and it helps me understand a little bit of where you're coming from, and I'm here to listen and not try and tell you, but I'm here to listen and understand so I can be a help to you. And as I said to you, that whole thing of going through life and having gone through a lot of valleys and a lot of mountaintops and lots of twists and turns, is you kind of learn to chill out a little bit and go, you know what, I thought last year was bad. This year could have a lot more twists and turns and ups and downs as well, but you know what, I'm getting used to it.
And what is the role of asking in it? Because you said earlier, for every 3 people you helped, you had 7 helping you, or you'd hope to have that balance. Did you ask?
I used to write to my top 10 friends list, and it sounds really, is there a word for that, like really selfish or something, or really big-headed or something, but I wouldn't tell them. It was my secret little list, but it was just, and it was my top, but I was a giver as well, so I had the 3 or 4 people that I was helping, but I used to literally just write it down and go, you know what, when I'm around that person, do they sap me or zap me? Zap me is a positive, or do they sap me? And so I just made sure that the balance was more in the area of positivity or wholesome healthiness versus people that were just going to pull me down.
Do you know what I love about you, Dean? There's not been any, throughout this entire chat today, you have never once sounded like a victim. Do you know? And there's just not that part of you. There's not the why me or anything like that. It's just, and you are positive, but you're positive in a positive way as well. You address your pain, you address things, you face things head on, you don't sweep them under the carpet, but there's just no point there where you're a victim, and I really admire that, because
hard.
It
Very
is really hard. You know a little bit of our stories, and we did tell you, and even occasionally, we do go into victim mode, but you have to fight your way out of it. But there's just been no sight of that with you at all today.
And it's easy, isn't it, to blame, and it's easy to excuse, because then you can mask the pain, run away from the pain, but it's actually being in the pain and dealing with it and owning it.
And helping others.
So, I talked about when my brother died, and I was just like, man, how come I know that some people can very easily, not to judge, go into bitterness and blame, get bitter, versus going somewhere to get refuge and help. And that's, again, the power of asking others and bringing other people into the equation. And it's very easy, just very, very easy to go that way rather than that way.
But each way we go, it actually doesn't matter. I had a message from a girl the other day who's a mother of her son's in prison, and she said his life is over. And I just said, no, it's not. Actually, while he's in prison, ask him to write his story down, get somebody to publish it when he comes out, because that can be the actual go-to point for which he can tell his story, and his go-to, what is it called, your unique selling proposition. I can't think of it, I'm no good at acronyms, but his unique selling proposition is that, well, I was in prison, and this is how bad my life was, but I got through it. And Joe and I always say we can't compare suffering is suffering, and we would say, if a child's in a pushchair, lost their teddy bear, it's as bad as your story, my story, Joe's story, because it's relative to what they've ever been through. It's relative to the coping mechanisms they've got. But, I think you are remarkable. You're such an inspiration. You've got so much to teach us. How does that feed into the work you're doing now? Because we said earlier that the Crate, your business space, which is beautiful, has that energy as well. It operates with that energy. How do you feel it translates into your working life in the Crate?
Yeah, sure. I, obviously, the community there is really, really cool. And we've just, I think we've, over the time, years of just kind of sowing into people's lives and being there for people during the ups and the downs of their business life, because, business is never easy. And we just kind of figure that, there's plenty of times, like you said about pulling the sheet over you, that a business person wakes up on a Monday morning and wants to pull their duvet and goes, oh, go away, like another week like last week. And I guess that we've gone about to create a place where people will turn around and go, nah, stuff it, I'll go to the crate, because I know when I get there, it'll feel good.
Yeah.
And I'll be around people that will be able to, help me, and, again, not having that kind of ego kind of driven, that, or competition, but a real sense of community and helping one another. So, by a lot of grace, we seem to have that, and, we're really excited and really proud of what's going on, not so much of what we've done, but actually what the community now is doing amongst themselves. So
so nice.
And if you're listening, looking for an office space in Auckland, Joe and I love the energy in the
awesome.
building. It's absolutely beautiful. So it's near Silverdale, isn't it?
No,
in Constellation Drive in
Constellation
Rosedale.
Drive.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question now? Because it was really nice what you said before about the positive, negative, and it takes just as much energy, and you're right, it does, and that's a choice, and I love that. And you mentioned the dashboard, and how when a light comes on, obviously you've got to look at the light on your dashboard and figure out what's wrong, and that was your analogy you used, wasn't it? So
We mentioned that as part of my snip, but we haven't talked about it.
We haven't talked about that, but I was going to say, what is your recipe for your mental health? What is your mental health recipe, and when does the dashboard light come on?
Whoa. Lack of sleep.
Okay.
Eating crap food. Sugar is involved with that. I'm a bit of a sweet tooth, so I don't really go to alcohol.
We relate. We're the chocolate
sugar,
girls.
which, yeah. So that's lack of sleep and the wrong food, and it's sort of like, you get things like I'm a few kilos heavier than what I should be at the moment, and I just know that just means that I'm carrying around it's like carrying around a 10 kilo stack of potatoes that on your back the whole time. Well, that just costs you energy, right?
Wish mine was on my back.
Not on your bum.
Not my, yeah. Our guys got it in their tum, right? So, but I'm saying that in itself. So, but I know that I just got to put my hands back on the steering wheel and take a little bit more care to get myself back into the point where I'll feel that energy will come back to me again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, however, how does that work for me? What was your question? Was
What's your recipe?
My recipe. So I get up, pretty much 5 days of the week, and Monday to Friday, and I go for a walk for at least an hour and a half.
Nice.
Yep, I walk down to the beach and have music in my ears. Sometimes I'm just thinking, sometimes I'm praying. That's really important to me. That's my positive recipe. My chill out is still positive, because I'm one of those people that I have no issue with going to the movies by myself.
Great, I love it.
I love it. I love going to the movies by myself. I really enjoy it, actually, because you're transfixed on the movie, aren't you? Anyway, it's not about having conversation with somebody else.
So if I need to chill out, and if it's a real popular movie, I think I might find someone there. I can take a hoodie, just sit there, and just.
Are you somebody that also comes out crying though, and then has to hide away?
Yeah, no.
Sometimes I delay in the cinema. I can't come out for 5 minutes. I don't want to be seen.
No, just kidding.
I know of a lovely Indian proverb that says, before we can see properly, we must first shed our tears to clear the way. You've done that.
Absolutely.
You've done that. And as you say, you went on your camping trip, and memories came up and you suddenly found yourself in tears. But generally, I think the message is, if we work through our pain rather than running away from it, and rather than masking it in long-term unhealthy coping mechanisms, if we sit in it, and your message is, just listen to yourself. What are the thoughts? Be aware of it and accept that suffering is a part of life. You're going to do this journey. Then what I'm hearing from you is that then you can celebrate other areas of your life as well, which is remarkable in you, and something that certainly I'm going to take away, the inspiration of the journey that you've walked. I would love to thank you, because I know that only because you've walked that walk, only because you've done your work, only because you've faced pain and shed many tears and suffer the loss of your brother, and no doubt also the split in your parents' relationship as well, the pain that caused you, you can give to so many people. And Joe and I are both recipients of that, and we're so grateful. It's only because of that you can give so much, and I know that you're giving to everybody every day, and thank you for what you've been through, to be able to share your message with us. And I know also listeners will take away so many tips, so many positive affirmations really that they can say to themselves about how to push through.
And you took on the legacy of your brother and you used that legacy to move forward, which is a really commendable thing to do as well. You know, you went straight away to help others and you set up the against drunk driving in school, and I think that's an amazing thing. That's an amazing message for listeners as well. So if something has happened to you, and if you have lost a loved one, it is a really good way to continue their legacy, isn't it? By doing something in good faith.
Nothing's a waste. Nothing's a waste. No matter how hard and how bad life is and what you go through, you know, you will come out the other side and be able to celebrate. You know, someone once told me, or I heard someone speak about it, that, you know, if I personally was to go and move a refrigerator, you said to me, Dean, can you just move that fridge? I couldn't pick it up and carry it. It's too heavy, it's too solid, it's too stuck. And quite often in life, our life is like that refrigerator. We're just stuck and we're solid and we're there, we're in our little rut. In order to move that refrigerator, I could move it if I take it off its gravity and I throw it off the kilter. I put it onto an angle and I shimmy it across the room, I'll be able to move that. And often, you know, our life, we are on a journey, and it's like an exciting journey. But to get us from here to there, sometimes life is going to have to throw us off kilter to get us off our stuck place, so that we'll actually move and go to a better place. And so, you know, how cool that, you know, that we are in this position where we don't have to go through life thinking that, you know, a tragedy is a tragedy. It is a tragic situation, but you know what? There will be a time we'll look back and we'll celebrate that.
Yeah.
And also, actually, moving that fridge, what comes to mind for me is I'd call somebody else in, I'd be calling Joe, we'd be having a laugh as we're doing it. To find some humour.
That's what I love about you guys.
It's the connection, isn't
Yeah.
it? We've moved mattresses upstairs and we just end up on the floor cracking up. But actually, when we do life with other people and we actually ask for help and we can find some compassion or laughter in it, it's healing in the midst of the pain, isn't it? It's not that we heal and move on suddenly. Actually, in the darkness, in the really rough times, we can find beautiful moments in our vulnerability, and especially if listeners are on board and you can connect and be raw, be vulnerable and be real, you can actually find such beauty in it as well in other people.
I have got a couple of questions. Yay!
Hey.
So we'll wrap up with these questions. So we won't keep you much longer, but one of our lovely listeners and viewers wants to know, did your family members have faith to guide them through their grief and healing too? Was the faith already there?
Not for all of us.
Okay.
No, so that was really, really interesting, that we dealt with in different ways. So my mother has faith, and that certainly has been a huge help to her. You imagine, you know, going through and losing a son. It's very hard, and you talked about it being hard for me, but, you know, I think, man, harder for a mother and a father, but, you know, I get it. Whereas my dad didn't have the faith, and he was a police officer, and he used to have to go and see a lot of those car accidents and you know, go through watching people have autopsies and stuff, and he knew what my brother went through with all of that, and it broke his heart. And I don't know if he's really, you know, got through it yet.
Well, that was going to be the next question. Like, what was their coping mechanisms? Obviously your mum's was faith, which was a good thing, and your dad, obviously, you say he's a bit broken, but did he have any other coping mechanisms?
Yeah, if you're watching out there, Dad, he, you know, I think he's one of these, as a police officer, you know, he's kind of learned just to kind of you know, hold things pretty tight. So it's hard to know really, but you know, just I don't know exactly, to be honest with you, if he's ever really.
And that takes courage anyway in itself, doesn't it? That takes courage to hold on to it. Whatever way we deal with pain and suffering is right for us, because we do it according to what we know or what resources we access. So whatever resource we go to, that is our coping mechanism, and we survive. And he survived, and we do survive with pain in our hearts. And I remember once asking, you know, when will I be completely healed of this pain? And I just sort of heard, the pain will never go. The losses will never go. You're a different person because of it. But that will always be a part of you. In the same way, if you lose a leg, you might heal from the experience, but you never get your leg back. You never get your brother back. So there's a part of us that we always carry pain with us. But again, it comes back to, can we find beauty in it?
Just to maybe give a quick answer to that, I think interesting enough, because I went down the road of faith, and that happened to be part of attending a church which had a community, and I'd say that my father didn't have faith, but he had a community outside of that, which was, more around his passion of home brews and drinking and those kind of things, and which is fine. But I definitely recognised back in the day that actually was his, I call it his church. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that was actually his.
Well, it's his community.
You know what I mean? It was his community,
Yeah,
exactly.
we all, as you said,
you know what I mean?
earlier.
And so we find it in different ways, but I think that comes back to the whole thing is that no one is designed to do life or go through any of this alone.
We're not.
And we do it so much better when we do have community around us.
I agree.
I think also to understand that everybody is going through something at any minute of any given day, whether we see it manifest in anger or rage or jealousy, it's pain. It comes back down to pain, doesn't it? And the message, I think, clearly comes from you. If we can love and we can serve and we can give back, and that's how we operate, then the world is so much a better place. So much better for having you in it, Dean.
And one last question, just one last question, and it is, what would your advice be to someone of a similar age and to help them heal? Say if there's a 15-year-old or a young teenager out there and they've gone through something, it doesn't necessarily even have to be the death of a sibling or a death of a parent, but if they want to heal, what advice would you give that teenager now?
I would say that, find others that have gone through something. It doesn't have to be the same thing, but have gone through stuff that can just be there to give you, just be compassionate and be a listening ear and give you hope.
Yeah.
Someone who's been through it but now out the other side. Yeah. Because time heals.
Yeah.
Time heals. Sometimes we try and fix it all, and the little 15-year-old, you want to try and solve it and fix it and deal with it now. But, it's going to be over time that it will actually heal. Yeah. And you need to have someone that's actually gone through that process that can just give you the hope that, it might not happen in your time frame, but it's going to happen.
Great
Lovely
message.
advice. That's
Great
really
message.
nice
I love
advice. So, on that note, could you just tell our lovely viewers and listeners where they can find you? What's your contact details?
Lovely. Well, if you want to, best way to contact us is to go to our website, which is thecrate.co.nz, and you'll find all the ability to email us or search us or whatever there, and of course we'd love to hear from anybody, and if there's anyone that I can point in the right direction and be any help around the area of mental health and finding health really, then love to be of help.
Well, from Sue and I, we would like to thank you from the bottom of our heart for being our first live podcast. It's very exciting. We'd like to thank the lovely Caroline over there and the lovely Noah who's doing sound and answering our little comments, which is awesome, and giving us our questions. So it's been a team effort. We are in the Depot Art Space in Devonport. It's such a great studio.
Cool, eh?
And what a lovely, lovely message. Thank you, Dean, for being a ray of sunshine, positivity personified, and thank you everyone for watching. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you so much.
Big group hug.
Aren't they lovely?
Thanks so much for being with us today. For us to inspire others to live their magnificently imperfect life, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or on your podcast app. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Pods with Posh and Pool. We can't wait for you to join us on our next episode. Love, light and peace.